So if you're in academia, you're a researcher, you'll soon realize we follow the path, the sort of conventional path that is prescribed. Um, I'll talk about that in a minute, that you'll soon find out that it's not going to make you happy in any sort of way. And if you become highly successful within the game, you actually get more depressed, at least in my view and what I've gone through. Um, And it's actually the opposite things. It's the stuff that you're told not to do that often gives you the most happiness. And I would persuade you to at least have some of that in your life. So what do I mean by the conventional view? Conventional view is that you push away as much of your life as possible for as long as possible so that you can write research papers. And the more research papers, and if you're in the harder sciences, the more grants that you write, the more famous that you become. And the more famous that you become, the more that you get opportunities given to you. The more opportunities given to you, the more responsibility that you actually have. And the more well-known that you actually become, again, and somehow this prestige is supposed to sort of fill voids in yourself, right? And that's the gist of it. With all of it is, if you were to look at us, we're very imperfect beings, right? We're all often, the story is very similar, that there was something that happened to us at some point in our lives early on, and we're trying to seek validation, external validation. And, at least for me, I was a lonely kid. There was a moment when I was like grade 9. I don't want to go into the details, but, I was very alone. And the way that I viewed myself is that I had to perfect myself and get better. And by getting better, then I would somehow, and getting better meant like better grades and, going to the gym, all this kind of stuff, that would somehow be perfect. And being perfect would get a lot of people to like me and love me, right? Like, that's the gist of it. And that's the whole, often, I think that this story is not unlike a lot of people's stories. And so they push themselves, get themselves into books, and then they see themselves as like, the more that you work, the more that the more that smarter you're perceived. And this means like ruthlessly cutting down other people to prop up your smartness, that the better off that you will become. You're going to fill that particular void in your soul. And a huge part of that actually is pushing away anything that is social. Anything that builds community is often considered a waste. There's these often doing things that, if you were to talk to people, they would say, don't do those particular things. It might be like, at least in the profession, I mean, it sounds really crazy, but like teaching, or doing administrative duties, or, community building in any sort of way is considered a waste. It doesn't have that much impact, and you're not going to get a lot out of it, right? And that's the central story of it. If you were to look at it, and people would tell you, don't do those things. As long as you possibly can, don't do those things. And those are the things. It's not necessarily about validation often, but it's about community, or finding your place, or finding that group that you need. And if you're to strictly do the validation thing, external validation thing, you would push all of that stuff away. And, in my experience, I've experienced that many times. And it doesn't feel good. You feel very alone. You feel very isolated. Like you feel that there is not a lot of community, all of these particular things. that we get meaning from as people, right? Like as people, we get meaning from small conversations, from a smile, um, from interacting in very subtle ways. And those things are often neglected, right? Or community building being like going out for coffee. Those things are often very, very much neglected. And those are the things that you often get the most amount of inspiration from in your life. They're the things that keep you going. They're the things that you look forward to. And I'm not saying that, your entire life should be a social butterfly. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying is that these things, these moments are important for all of us to experience. And so having a blend of both, both understanding, um, of both understanding the sort of social aspects, right? Like having that part of your life the whole time, right? Like having community as part of your life the whole time, having um, a little bit of work, but I think like not to the extreme of what most people go through because it's very isolating. Looking at ways that you can build your own community, get your own self going, and so you feel good about it. The more that you have these small moments in your life, at least for me, it has been profoundly important. And doing these things, all these little things, they're not rewarded at all. But you have to acknowledge that you do them not necessarily because of duty. I don't think that there's that aspect of it, but it's because you're measuring things in different ways. Right? There is some duty associated with it in the sense that you have to do this to because it's an important thing, but it's also because it helps you do the things that you need to do. Right? I think knowing the model of being a monk and being isolated and doing one little tiny thing, it's extremely productive, but it neglects that you could only do that so long. It also neglects that often there's community that you need to get going. And finding those things, which is often extraordinarily hard to find, at least in my experience, um, you probably won't find it. You might never find it within your own profession, but you might find it in other ways. And I encourage you to have those things that are part of your life so that you feel complete. Doing those things that are not rewarded, whatever that they might be. They may be really strange. They might be, people might look at you and say, why are you doing that? All those things are extraordinarily good. And I think you should practice those things. Practice allocating some time in your life to wasteful things that other people would consider being wasteful. That may be actual community building where you go out and you volunteer cleaning up things. It may be that you simply do a message every day on social media platform. Maybe it is that you make the effort to have a coffee with a different group of people every day, or maybe just even with the same group of people. These things are extraordinarily important for all of us. And yet they're often missing in our lives for those of us that are focused on performance alone. Practice those. See what will happen if you actually do it. See what happens in your life when you let go of some of that performance, that the idea that that efficiency is the only thing that matters, and getting to the end and completing everything and getting to that validation, that external validation where somebody is going to give you a ribbon or whatever. Try to remove those from your life and see what happens. I'm not saying completely remove it from your life. What I'm saying is finding a little bit more balance between performing and at the same time being more complete and finding a community that you enjoy and you're part of. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.